subject matter which is now being discussed is very subtle. We are now entering Brahma Vidya. For that, preparation has to be there. This subject matter is not only for our intellectual understanding, but it has to go beyond intellection. It has to go deeper than our intellect. And for that, great amount of preparation is required. Preparation in terms of how we approach it, how we behave in our daily life that qualifies us for our approach, how we prepare ourselves to even come to listen to this subject matter. Because of its subtlety, because of its great reverence, if we are not reverential towards it, we will not get the benefit from it. So, we do prayers before we start this Brahma Vidya. It is so important that we tune to it. And when we tune to the prayers, our eyes should not be open and looking at various things around, but our eyes should be focused on the higher goal. Otherwise, what is the point of waking up and dragging ourselves to the halls of Brahma Vidya? If we cannot do that, then it becomes very difficult. Our attitude should be very reverential towards the subject matter. And because of that, I am quite strict about it. I want you guys to come over here on time. ये प्रार्थना हो गई और आप आते हैं, ये उचित मर्यादा नहीं है ब्रह्म विद्या पढ़ने के लिए. ये ठीक नहीं है. And when we sit over here, we have to sit with the sankalpa that I want to unite with this. And the more we go towards it, the more it will come towards us. It meaning, we are already that. We are already that Brahman, which is the subject matter, but it is not in our abidance. Intellectually, we may have understood Tattvamasi, but having gained that abidance in Tattvamasi is completely different. So, the reason the prayers are there is because the mind is very rajasic by nature. Even though we wake up, we get ready, it is getting into the car, driving this, that, it is already disturbed. We have to give it some time to take it into the sattvic mode. because from this sattva we have to make a leap to that which is beyond the gunas. And it is the mind which first has to obey, because the Shravanam is done by the senses and it is done by one sense, but the other senses have to cooperate in being quiet. If the other senses do not cooperate, mind's attention cannot be on exclusively this one sense for listening. So the other senses have to be quiet, listening has to be proper, mind has to be attentive. For that it has to be sattvic, because the subject is beyond the sattva guna. And as it has heard it, without adding any of its own vibrational frequency, it has to deliver this to the buddhi. The buddhi, without coloring it from its past experience, should just accept it and allow it to get deeper into the subconscious, which can make its own. And then when it is over, the class is over, the buddhi has to dive back into the deep storehouse where this is stored, so it can keep on drinking this perennial ambrosia and make it its own. This is the whole methodology of Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasana. And if we don't have respect for it, if we don't have the respect for the process in which it has come about, then it cannot bless us. It cannot. It will be just some information. So, Divyo Hyamurta Purushaha. This absolute is Divya. It is self-resplendent. It is self-effulgent. This connection has to be made that I am this knowing principle. Initially, I am a witness, and just to be a witness, I have to necessarily learn to quieten all my senses and learn to look at the senses themselves without the sense objects or the senses diving into the sense objects, creating sensory experience. It is a very delicate operation which has to be done, and it can only be done by the silent witness Sakshi, because then only we will realize how Chaitanya arrives into this Jada Indriya, that it is I, because of my presence, and live in the tongue so that it can experience all the rasasvada. And this, when it is done, when we learn to objectify the divinity of the senses, that itself becomes dhatu prasadat. It becomes the prasad of the dhatu. Over here the senses are referred to as that equipment which itself comes to bless us. The senses first have to bless us by obeying. How can I obey? I have to first notice it. I have to acknowledge it. I have to work with it. So this Visheshan of the Atma Tattva over here is Divya, but it is not a Visheshan. It is a Swarupa Lakshana. The Visheshan is given over here. Adjective is used for, that is how we understand, but it is not an adjective, it is a noun, it is its nature. And the nature being self-effulgent, I have to go towards it, but I have to start at the external most extremities, and that is the senses. The senses being the insentient world of matter, it is still the greatest thing which has been produced. The tongue, the nose, the skin, the eyes, the hearing. If we really look at the tongue, it is only a piece of meat. But what power the tongue has is unimaginable. Not only is it capable of tasting, but it is capable of dexterous movement to create sounds. Where did the ability in the matter come to behave in the way that it does? If that much upasana we can do of just observing the tongue, we will be that much closer to the Atma Tattva. Each one of these senses, before we reject them, we have to see the divinity which flows through them, and that is the highest most is its own nature, self-effulgence, but how it lends the self-effulgence to a tongue, to a skin, to these eyes, to ears, so on and so forth. Dyotanat iti dev, that which is capable of illumining. The tongue illumines the world of taste. It illumines the world of words. In this way, it is a great upasana. It is a very subtle upasana, very easy to do the upasana of Shivalinga, of Shaligram, of Meru, but to do the upasana of the organ which is already over here and go beyond the capacity of that organ to even illumine that is actually this Divya. And in the tongue, the tongueness, in the skin, the skinness, in the ears, the earness, in the eyes, the eye-ness. If we look for that form, it is formless. And that is He Amurta. Amurta. It is formless. A formless, nameless entity arrives and enlivens matter. It is the wonder of wonder. It is everywhere, and yet it is nowhere to be seen. Because if we look for it as a matter principle, as an object in space and time, it cannot be bound by even the subtle time. We trap the concept of time in a watch, but time is not that, it is beyond it. The physical clock on the wall ticking gives an indication of the chronology of the time principle at work. But the true time, the Kal that we talk about, Devata Kal, how can we trap that in a little clock? The principle of the concept of chronology, of one, of two, the Sankhya, that cannot be captured. So, Amurti, it has no form. And these are all the words for deep, deep meditation known as Nididhyasan. Each one has to be captured and each one has to be wrapped with our own intellect until our intellect becomes this Divya Amurta. And through the 5 apertures of the senses of perception, this light should ever shine through it as the knowing principle that, oh, the taste, the minute I taste a taste, I should be led to the tasting principle so I don't get caught up with the taste. At the level of the taste, Raga Dvesha Vyavastito. At the level of Indriyani, Bhagavan Krishna says Raga Dvesh is over there. But that which makes the taste possible, there is no Raga or Dvesha. When I go to the tasting principle, it is a taste. I acknowledge the taste and I leave the taste without giving a further commentary on it. That starts taking me towards the self-effulgent principle. And this Divya Amurta is Purusha. Puram Shete Purusha. In this village of 10 senses, in the Samuha of the village of Indriya Gram, it makes its dwelling the light of consciousness and livens the whole village, and it is this Purusha. It ever is. At the Vyashti level, it lends its sentiency to the individual Indriya Gram. At the Samashti level, the cosmic village he sleeps in. Meaning, he lends himself as the support of the entire cosmic world, and at the same time he dwells over here in the Vyashti as the principle of Sakshi, the principle of the Jiva. Hood of the Jiva is this Paramatatva. The experiences of the Jiva that the Jiva goes through owns up, all because this Purusha is there. Angushta Matra Purusha Madhye Atmani Tishtati. This symbolically of the size of the thumb. But how can it be of the size of the thumb? It is the all-pervading nature but for the sake of upasana, for the sake of meditation, the amurta is taken of the size of the thumb. The formless is taken as though having a form like a thumb, but it is beyond it. So Divya, it is self-effulgent. At the practice level, at the sadhana level, this self-effulgent self is the senseness of each one of the senses, and I can make the leap to that in my daily living, in my sadhana, to assimilate self-effulgence. And that senseness, it doesn't have a form. The tongue may have the form, but the tasting principle doesn't have a form. And we can extend that to everything where it lends its sentiency, and this self is the support. In fact, the entire village of the senses is enlivened by it. Sabahya bhyantara hyajaha. It is on the outside and it is on the inside. On the inside, it is the subtlemost presence. It is. Many people don't know what isness is. We have acquired the usage, dexterity of the usage of the word is grammatically as a verb. But the understanding of is in Vedanta Shastra is not a verb, it is a noun. We have to make a leap from the verb to the noun. A verb, when it is said kriyapad, it is endowed with an activity. Noun is presence. It is the one which is the support. It is the one from where the activity is launched. So this isness, it does not do the kriya of isness. The Atma does not do the activity of being present. Its nature is presence. At no point in time we can remove the presence of the Atma. And that presence, it ever is. He ajaha. It is unborn presence. Presence is not created. Presence is not destroyed. Presence cannot be transformed. It is sarva vikar rahitatvat hi ajaha. It is unborn because it is devoid of all types of modifications. No modifications are possible in this presence. This Atma is. And that isness is me. That isness is effulgence. That isness is the isness in which the subtle intellect resides. It pervades the intellect, but the intellect knows not that it is pervaded by the presence of the self. And because the intellect knows not that it is pervaded by it, it owns up a certain amount of area and says, I am this, I am this, I am this. But to even own up, I am this, who allows the intellect to own up, I know this much, or I don't know this much? It is the unborn, anta within, and on the outside, I see so many other living beings. The same Atma upholds the isness of each one of them, and that same Atma upholds the whole cosmic presence. The cosmos is, the change of the Maya is, and that is Bahya. And on the Anta, I am able to do this witnessing. Sabahya Bhyantara Yajaha Apranaha. And this presence, it is, like I said, it is a noun, it is not a verb. So because it is not a verb, it cannot have activity. Pranic Shakti is the kampanam, the movement. And Pranic Shakti is a symbolic representation of the Kriya Shakti. It is devoid of Kriya. So this isness, a verb but not a verb. It is a noun, and that is apranaha. It removes the kriyapad of this presence, and that is apranaha. Aprana, there is no movement. This presence is unperturbed presence. The movement of the thought, and even subtler to the movement of the thought, the genesis of the thought, the sankalpa shakti is also not in there. That is apranaha. There is no sankalpa. Sankalpa, the volition of the admittance of the ownership to embark upon the journey of doing, that is also not there. All this that I said in English, Sanskrit captures it in sankalpa. There is no ownership of engaging in an activity. In the whole village where the king presides over the village, the king does not plow the fields. The king does not make the pots. The king does not sell the grains. The king does not make the jewelry. There are different people, different shops, different things are done in the entire kingdom. But just because of the presence of the king, the order in everything is maintained, because everybody knows if they don't do their job, he will be notified. So Shankaracharya uses this Rajavat Sada, like a king, the presence of the awareness itself is enough for the jiva to take the effulgence of the knowing principle of the awareness and convert it into the principle of activity. Flow outside as action, but the Chaitanyata in the very Kriya is Shakti, and the Jada karma, when it becomes powerful, that karma has embedded Shakti in it, and the Shakti is the enlivening principle of Jada karma, and that comes from the presence of the awareness. But the awareness does not do any activity of awareness. It is. The sun does not do a job from sunrise to sunset of let me give my heat and light to everyone. The sun does not do the activity of giving light and heat. The very presence of the sun itself is light and heat. So apranaha kriya shakti rahitatvad. Then he amanaha, mind is the one, sankalpa vikalpatmaka manaha. So when it is said mind, should I do it, should I not do it? But the mind over here, the intellect is included. So the Ichha Shakti comes from the mind and the Jnana Shakti comes from the Buddhi. So Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, all three of them are negated by Aprana Amanaha. And there is absolutely no desire at the level of Chaitanyata to even modify something, to create something, to distribute something, to destroy something. No, it is. And what it knows is complete. What does it know? It knows itself. The knowledge that it is enough. But the intellect, it wants to know everything else, and it doesn't know who it is. And that is the plight of the Jnana Shakti of the Buddhi. This is the pitfall of Buddhi, which wants to know everything except its own self, because of which it can know various other things. And because that knowledge is not there in Buddhi, now it wants to feel good about itself by knowing others, and the substitution of self-knowledge is done by knowledge of the material world, and that is called Jnana Shakti. And mind not being satisfied with itself always wants more and more and more and more. That is the Ichha Shakti of the mind. The mind is the one which runs after the pleasure principle, the Ichha Shakti. And then the intellect has to find out the way to fulfill that, that is the Jnana Shakti. And the senses have to cooperate, and that is the Kriya Shakti. All of those are negated by Aprana Yamanaha. Then what is it? Shubhraha. It is beyond the three gunas. It is beyond the Triputi over here. It is ever divine. It is ever pure. Wherever there is Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, Kriya Shakti, there are limitations. And these limitations are taints. But this Atma, taintless. Shubhraha. Shubhraha, it is ever fulfilled. It is ever fulfilled in its presence, that effulgence, he aksharat paratav paraha. One is the highest, and the other one is the Dvavimo Purusho Loke Ksharaschaksharayeva cha Ksharas Sarvani Bhutani Utastho Ksharamchyate Uttamav Purushastvanya Paramatmeti Udahudaha. So there are three Purushas. One is a Uttama Purusha, one is a Kshara Purusha, and one is Akshara Purusha. The Kshara and the Akshara are both considered to be Maya. Kshara is the manifested Maya. Akshara is the unmanifest Maya. And Uttama Purusha is that which ever is. So, Aksharat Parata Paraha. It is beyond this manifest and the unmanifest of tomorrow which will come. It is beyond the play of the Maya. It is Uttama Purusha. It ever is. This will never become. This will never ever get sullied by Maya. This Aksharat Paratav Paraha, he is the Mr. Maya. And this Mrs. Brahman is this Maya. He is beyond Mrs. Brahman. He is the Brahman. Even Maya presses the feet of Uttama Purusha. This is for meditation to be churned over and over and over again. Etasmat jayate pranaha.
Etasmat jayate pranaha.
Manas sarvendriyani cha.
Manas sarvendriyani cha.
Kham vayu jyotirapaha.
Kham vayu jyotirapaha.
Prithvi vishvasya dharini.
Prithvi vishvasya dharini.
So mantra number 2 was the Paramarthika Swarupa Lakshana of Brahman. This is the highest, and that same will be repeated in so many different ways. Now comes the Sarva Karanatva Swarupa of Brahman. What is this Karana Swarup? What is this entire world of Maya? If he is the absolute Mr. Brahman, and if Mrs. Brahman exists, who guides Mrs. Brahman? So all this is the description of the presence of Maya Devi, but the support of Maya is none other than Brahman, and fraction of Brahman is enough to support the whole cosmic Maya. How much of Mahavishnu can Lakshmi ji hold in her hands? Mere fraction of a portion of not even 2 feet, 1 foot, and he is the whole cosmic principle, all wrapped up in the Kshira Sagar of none other than snake over there, the time principle. Even the time looks in awe as to how much Maya can grab. And what Maya can grab is mere fraction, and etasma jayate pranaha. The entire cosmic kriya shakti, where can it come from? It can only come from this absolute Brahman, absolute nirvishesha, nirguna. If we look at the light itself has no color, but that same pure white light, when it goes through a prism, science tells us that all colors are in the colorless light. All frequencies are in the soundless space. The space which is empty has all frequency. From one spectrum to the other spectrum, the entire sound. And what a human being can hear is a fraction of the entire gamut of it. In the same way, all gunas necessarily have to have an origin which is gunatita. Only then he can accommodate all gunas. The light, pure light, has to be colorless for it to accommodate all colors. The sound has to be soundless to accommodate all frequencies. And in this way, all kriya has to have its origin in that which is without kriya. Only then each kriya can be identified properly from a standpoint of that measuring principle. And the measuring principle is a reference point, and the reference point has no kriya. Only then kriya can be understood as kriya when it is nishkriya. So Brahman, being nishkriya, becomes the cause of all kriya. This is etasma jayate pranaha. The entire cosmos exists. Each one of the planet doing its job of exact proper movement. Each one of them floating in space. Who dictates? There is no highway, there is no speed limit, there are no changing lines, nothing. And yet, each one of knows exactly how fast, how slow, how long, how far, how in. This entire cosmic pranic shakti, this is that intelligence in kriya. Where does it come from? That is etasma jayate pranaha. Manas sarvendriyani cha. The kriya at the cosmic level, the kriya now at the individual level, mind, sarva indriyani cha, the activities from the macrocosm to the microcosm, how each one of these little jivas are capable of doing their own thing. Science tells us when the little ant carries a grain of sugar, that sugar sometimes is 10 times its own weight. How those fine fiber like legs are capable of holding and moving at the same time. This power of the indriya to do what it does. The elephant capable of picking up a peanut, and the smell of the peanut, it knows exactly where it is and it can pick up. The tiny peanut and the massive elephant, the tiny ant and a massive sugar cube. Who brings about the power in all these things? Mana sarva indriyani cha, the principle of kriya, the ability to mobilize matter and make matter do what it is incapable of doing. Kartum akartum shaknoti iti Ishwar. It is capable of doing, it is capable of not doing, and it is capable of doing something completely different. Kartum akartum anyatha kartum shakti iti Ishwarasya shakti. That is manas sarvendriyani cha, the movement of all of them. Then what to talk of even the 5 elements: Kham, Vayu, Jyoti, Apaha, Prithvi, Vishwasya Dharini. He is the upholder of the space, the vastness of space we cannot even comprehend. Science tells that some more than 70% some dark matter, this matter, whatever we don't even know what is in there. But what all things the space element itself upholds. And what we think of space is the Panchikarana space. It has already gone through grossification. What Hubble telescope captures is not the Tanmatra Kham. It is the Panchikruta Panchamahabhutaihi Janita Kham. It is of all the 5 elements gone through its grossification is the space that we see. The Tanmatra ever remains beyond in the Avyakta Maya. We won't even get a chance to see it unless that person does the Upasana of space. For lives at a time, the space element will give darshan as the manifested and as the unmanifest colossal power behind the space that we see. Kham, Vayu. The Shastra tells us that there are 54 types of Vayu, Marut Devatas. And each one of them unique in their own ways. But that is Panchi Kruta, Panchikarana Kruta Vayu. This movement of the Vayu that we see, it is a grossified one. Because the space is grossified, it accommodates all matter, and from it, the total matter which exists in the entire cosmos is less than a fraction of a percent of space. And we are so fascinated of that Prithvi is just a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction billionth of that is Prithvi. And of that, my country, my village, my home. If we look at how far away we are from the cosmos which has manifested, and I, me and my, if it rotates around me like the three dushta grahas, what will be the plight of such a jiva? How can they ever understand the cosmic Kham, Vayu, Jyoti, the light principle? The sun can only send its rays as far as the extremities of this Milky Way, which will allow it to. After that, it is just some other sun somewhere else has to do the job. Apaha, the water element, the uniqueness of this Bhuloka, uniqueness of earth is the water element. And in that water exists this Prithvi, because the Jiva Rashis can only be sustained by this water. The whole of the Saturn exists in methane. It rains methane over there, but no life can exist. Just like the rivers run from the water, the rivers from the mountains, they run to the oceans. It is water element. On other planets, it's the other element, something else, methane. So, all these things, Prithvi Vishwasya Dharini, this is for meditation. It is to take us into the deep, deep, subtle realms of Atma Tattva. My buddhi has to enter the subtlety of Atma. It has to become all pervasive. All these are for meditation. We will continue week after next week. No classes as I'm traveling. Sarve bhavantu sukhina,
Sarve santu niramayah, Sarve bhadrani pashyantu, Ma kasyit dukha bhave. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
After listening to all this, please don't talk. Go to your respective places and just remain in this.